Hey, it's 3.1 literary aspect video about storm natural disaster motif. So if that's what you're tracing, you're in the right video. First of all, how is this motif defined? Or this literary aspect defined? It's a motif, which means it's a symbolic image or idea that repeats throughout the book. And that's really important when we're talking about motifs. And it's why motifs are also a really good thing to trace in order to determine meaning, because you watch for how the pattern changes. There was an announcement. And how the pattern repeats, how it progresses, regresses, and really, maybe most importantly, how it comes up in the very end of a book. When we watch for all of those things, they will inform us of meaning, what the point is of the book. And so the storm and natural disaster motif is a great one to watch for. We are looking for, when we look for examples of this, all of the hurricanes that are referenced. Those are maybe the most obvious. Sometimes there's just storms or rain mentioned. I think at one point there's a fire that's mentioned too, but anything caused by nature is going to work here. That is a disaster, okay? And so here's a definition from Collins Dictionary: natural event which causes a lot of damage and kills a lot of people. Here we've got an earthquake, typhoon. That's what we're talking about when we talk about natural disaster. But I've also got the word storm in there. So any sort of anything natural from Mother Nature that can be violent. All right, so let's look for some examples. First of all, we have the epigraph. And remember, one of the three epigraphs, I should say. An epigraph is any short inscription in the beginning of a book. And in this book, the first epigraph is one by Harriet Tubman. We saw the lightning, and that was the guns. And then we heard the thunder, and that was the big guns. And then we heard the rain falling, and that was the blood falling. And when we came to get in the crops, it was dead men that we reaped. So the connection here to the storm and natural disaster motif, I think, is kind of obvious, right? When Tubman compares lightning to guns, thunder to big guns, cannons, I imagine, and rain to the actual dying, the blood that's being shed by these soldiers. We have a description, metaphorically or figuratively, of a storm. And so that's the first example that I saw. Another example from that first reading is there is no public housing at all in DeLille, and the project housing that existed before Hurricane Katrina and Pass Christian consisted of several small red brick duplexes and a few subdivisions, single-family homes, which housed some Black people, some Vietnamese. Now, 7 years after Katrina, developers build 2- and 3-bedroom houses up on 15 to 20-foot stilts where this public housing stood, and these houses fill quickly with those still displaced from the storm or young adults from Pass Christian and DeLille who want to live in their hometown. Okay, so in this example, we have the reference to Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina is sort of always at the edges of this book because it was so destructive to DeLille and that area. Hurricane Katrina took place in 2006. This book was written in 2013. So when she says now, 7 years after Katrina, she's really talking about 2013 when she's writing the book. And a lot of things are kind of determined like in relation to Katrina. However, the deaths that she recounts in the book take place from 2000 to 2004. So Katrina hasn't even happened at the end of that portion of the story. So keep that in mind too. The other thing is, you can see the decimation here, the destruction of the hurricanes and how, there's nothing left after, even 7 years after Katrina came through. Okay, let's see. Here's another reference to Katrina. Hurricane Katrina made that impossible for several years since it razed most of the housing past Christiana and decimated what was closest to the bayou and DeLille. Then we're back to 1969 when my father was 13 and my mother 11. Hurricane Camille hit. It flattened everything, wiped away the landscape with an indomitable hand. It's a tough word for me. Sorry, guys. Hand. I imagine everyone in South Mississippi must have thought the world was at an end. Camille was only one in a staccato succession of tragedies. So staccato succession, a repetitive, repeating of tragedies in these days. Southern Mississippi boys, black and white, died in Vietnam. Cities all over the U.S. imploded in riots and churches were bombed. Crosses burned. Freedom riders tried to register folks to vote. And in Mississippi, the rivers and bayous were watery graveyards. Now this continues, and it gets a little bit long, but I do want to read it to you. Locally, black men and women were demonstrating on public beaches where they were not allowed to sunbathe and swim. In return, they were being attacked by dogs and policemen. They must have thought the end times had come when Hurricane Camille, a Category 5 storm, bore down on them, killing more than 250 people, drowning a family of 13 who'd searched out shelter in a Catholic church in Pass Christian. The hobbled authorities put families in tent cities. After my grandmother Celestine's house was lifted from its foundation, my father and his sisters and mother stayed in one such tent city. My grandmother Dorothy's house was spared since it sits farther up in DeLille in a part that we call the Channot, which is distant enough from the DeLille Bayou to escape the surge. My mother's family provided water for the entire town when people learned that there was an artesian spring in their yard. And then we hear about, I was running out of room. We hear about how Ward's father's family fled from the memory of their house rocking off its foundation while they swam to stay alive in the attic. And then later they go to Los Angeles. So there's just more details about the destructiveness of these storms and the lasting effects. And you wouldn't have to write this whole gosh darn thing down, but I'm just showing you all of this is a reference to storms, right? And so you could take any part of it you wanted down. You're going to start looking for connections between these, and those are really the ones that you want to focus on, or the parts of them that you want to focus on. I think a lot of the storm and natural disaster motif examples are quite long. And so, just feel free to use an ellipses and to just put the first word and the last, and then you can find it in the book later when you need to, whatever you want to do to make the process a little bit easier. Here's another, those were all the ones that I found in the first reading, and maybe there are more that I missed. Effects of this literary aspect, well, I think the hurricanes and storms and the natural disasters create a powerless feeling in the reader, because the people in these areas have no way to escape. Even a church doesn't save the family of 13. They're swimming to their attic to try to survive in another part. And all of the homes are knocked down. That's the use of the word razed, right? So, the people there have no power. Nothing they can do is going to stop the hurricane. And so it really creates a powerless feeling. It also enhances the unanswerable, mysterious nature of the epidemic. So in the same way that Ward is looking to find answers to her question of, why this epidemic happened, why 5 men close to her died violent deaths in 4 years. Oftentimes people who lose their homes or have experienced natural disaster like this are asking why, right? There's no answer of why this happens, and like why someone loses their home and someone else doesn't, or why this hurricane came at this time, and those kinds of things. It's a mystery. There aren't clear answers. I think it also reminds the reader of the complete decimation that's created in Ward's world by these deaths. when the loved ones die, and how it just completely raises the emotional landscape of the victims' families and friends who are left behind, the survivors. And then the fear and trauma, too, that's created in the survivors. Like, is this going to happen again? You know, the staccato succession of these tragedies. Who knows who's going to die next? And I think it emphasizes the contrasting feelings of love for this area, for this region, and then also fear about the region, right? Ward wants to live in DeLille because this is home. It is also the place of these natural disasters. So there is a tension there created between the two. The contrast between the decimation of the hurricanes and the natural disasters and the love of home and history are kind of fighting each other. And then also, I think it mirrors the repetitive nature of generational trauma, right? So her great-great-great-grandparents were experiencing the hurricanes and the natural disasters just like she is experiencing them. Her ancestors were experiencing the violent deaths of young men taken too soon, just like she is experiencing them. It happens generation after generation after generation, keeps repeating itself. Okay, so those are the effects that I saw, and you know, when you're looking at an individual example, you're going to be more specific, but these are just some bullet points to help kind of get you on the right track, okay? And then the next part in the packet asks you to look at the 3 themes and how you think that this literary aspect can connect to those. And so you can watch the theme video too, or just, you know, do your best based on what you already know and respond to that part as well. Okay? Good luck as you look for these and analyze, evaluate, and interpret your geniuses.